Now, each of the three speakers is going to highlight a different approach, and you're going to go first, and I think you're more local than the others.
Yes. Local boy, hopefully made good. We have, however, been operating against Anglo standards up till now, since you haven't had a quick induction into health and safety. There's no intention to have fire alarm practice, so if the alarm go off, you can assume it's the real thing. And the exits are there or there, and people will be on hand quickly to guide you to exit points just outside the building. So, to talk about Anglo American and our approach to local impact development assessment. First of all, who are we? We are one of the top 5 mining companies in the world. We mine base metals, platinum, ferrous metals, coal, and we own 45% of De Beers, although that's a non-managing stake. And our colleagues in Tarmac, the market leader in aggregates in the UK, which is up for sale, so if anyone wants to offer me a price a little later, we'd be glad to have it. $2 billion of 28 billion total. Of those suppliers, 45% are in Africa. 6.6 billion was reinvested in the business. 2.9 billion in .35% of our tax revenue paid, 45% of our supply chain, and 55% of our wages. So, as a core business, a significant contributor. And indeed, if we're comparing the various percentages that any one company contributes, Unilever, SAB, Miller, I think we are about 5% of total tax take, the corporate tax take in South Africa.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. Just go back a second. Can I ask you a question about it? When you say that suppliers,
yes.
Is that taxes paid by suppliers?
No,
payments to
no, that's payments to suppliers.
And employees, that's your total wage bill?
Yes, 2.9 billion for employees, 13 billion for suppliers, etc. Thank you. I'm not going to talk through this in great detail, but it's an attempt that we have to try and look at the various ways in which we can be development actors. We don't have a business case for being a development agency, but clearly wherever we operate we have a significant footprint and an ability to be a significant actor amongst the development objectives. So the core business is clearly, as I think the last slide indicates, the most important aspect of our development impacts. But looking at that core business, there are many ways in which one can increase or improve the beneficial development impacts. So looking at pre-employment training to equip people to be available and eligible for work in our operations. Constant skill development, building local supply chain capacity, which is something that we've done particularly in South Africa. Beneficiation, looking at where one can move commodities further along the supply chain, along the value chain. Community development, clearly, one of the key things is around engagement. You can't be a good development actor if you don't know what development needs are. Assumed development needs are generally wrongly assumed. Benefit sharing, critically, what sort of arrangement do you have with local communities? What are their expectations of having some share in your achievements? And alternative livelihoods. There would once have been a day when there was a nice, neat triangular benefit. seem to be getting feedback. I can't even blame anyone for these facilities, can I? Let's try that. Right. No, that's very well. Right. There was once a time when there was a nice triangle of benefits between the company getting profits, government. There's nothing on me, unless I'm bugged and don't know it. There used to be a triangle of benefits for a mining project whereby government got tax revenue, company got profits, and communities would get lots and lots of jobs, lots of low-skilled jobs. The industry has changed significantly, although it's a rather more labour-intensive than oil and gas, for example. The level of skill needed is significant. So if you're going to bring benefits to communities in terms of employment and livelihoods, you need also to look at a facilitatory role that we might play around things like improving agricultural livelihoods through bringing in expertise around marketing, around agricultural best practice, etc., or indeed critically building supply chain enterprise development. Through our enterprise development programs, for example, we are currently supporting in the region of 14,000 jobs. Those are freestanding independent companies that are not tied to Anglo outsourcing, including in South Africa, where we now have 12 small business hubs, 250 new companies generated in the last year. A key challenge for us has been how to professionalise the social function within the company, and how therefore to have people who understand what our impacts may be in relation to wider society. And the first step along that road was the creation of the SEAT process. This is actually the second version of the toolbox, the Socio-Economic Assessment Toolbox. It contains now 30 tools. It started off at 22 that enable assessment, engagement, and management planning of the process by which we can measure our development impacts and improve on them. Emphasis on accountability and managing impacts and contributing to socio-economic development, not primarily through social investment, but primarily through our core business. It is developed, it's deployed every 3 years at each of our mature operations, but increasingly we've also found that it works actually whilst we're still in project development phase as well. It is not, I should hasten to add, in any sense, a replacement for a full social impact assessment. Another way in which we've been trying to professionalise the function and build our own capacities is through NGO partnerships, internationally and locally. And indeed, we're just embarking now on 2 social development programmes for our site-level practitioners at the University of Cape Town, a foundation course on social development, and for our senior managers, a programme putting together jointly with Cambridge University and Queensland University on social development, which will bring at least 40 senior managers through each year. Now, a strange thing about the mining sector is that we believe that in many situations our indirect impacts may be greater than our direct ones. So in migration in developing countries can be a very major problem. If suddenly you, through creating economic opportunity, you double the population of an area, clearly that has huge impact upon the original host community. Now, we by and large haven't asked those people all to arrive on the doorstep, but we know from experience that happens. Therefore, we are increasingly trying to develop tools and approaches to help us play a role in handling that, because that can lead, of course, to competition for water resources, food price inflation, conflict, etc. Moreover, mines can also have made, because they are such a big player in a local economy, can have a very big impact on relationships between stakeholders. So trying to understand the dynamics that were there before you were there and how you're impacting those dynamics is pretty critical in understanding conflict issues. And critically important for us is to move from a paternal to participative model of community development. We don't have yet a settled cadre of social professionals, but we are increasingly building that group up. And I think we're now stuffed full of environmental scientists. 10 years from now, I think we'll be in a similar position with social anthropologists, sociologists, etc. And another critical point that we need always to look at is stopping government from abdicating its role and leaving it up to the country. So the seat objectives, this, by the way, is what it looks like, were to strengthen our social license to operate through understanding our impacts, building our internal capacity to manage social issues, ensuring effective stakeholder engagement so we understand both our impacts and development needs, and improving risk management. The key features talked about in part, so since I'm shooting slightly, I'll go straight on to the next one. Broadly, the process splits down into profiling all our own economic impacts of the operation in terms of taxes, employment directly generated, indirectly generated, what we're doing in terms of procurement, social investment, trading expenditure, etc., and bringing that together in one place, sometimes the first time. Secondly, then profiling the community and then consulting the community to see what their perceptions of our impacts are, then working through with them the reasons why there may be a gap between our perceptions and their perceptions, and producing problem-solving solutions, and then finally coming out with a report at the end of the process, which is a key part of the accountability. These are some examples of each of the main stages. So the relationship management tools, for example, include one on how to establish a due process complaints and grievance procedure, and managing the social dimensions of mine closure. This one is critical. This is the problem-solving stage. It's there are 11 different tools that can be drawn upon. It doesn't tell you everything you need to know about establishing partnerships or human capital development, but it tells you where to find out more and how to develop responses in those areas. And these 11 tools really divide into 4 main areas: employment creation, access to funding, leveraging external funding, supporting local infrastructure development, and capacity development. I mentioned that we've moved from Seat 1, which was introduced in 2004, to Seat 2. Seat 1, though, in moving to Seat 2, we did a thorough evaluation of it, at which point Seat has been instituted at some 70 sites in 18 countries, being deployed at mines, smelters, paper mills, forests and quarries. I should say we used to own paper mills and forests before we demerged from Omni. And we are also finding that a number of other companies, a number of NGOs are now borrowing methodology. And we have particularly encouraged NGOs to work with us in countries like Chile, Namibia and Russia to give greater credibility to the whole process as far as stakeholders are concerned. And the recurring issues that have come up are perhaps not surprising: access to economic opportunities, perceptions of environmental impacts, sometimes real, sometimes not. But a critical learning, of course, is also perceptions of realities until such time as you contradict them. And it's led on 2 occasions to health impact studies being commissioned from independent third parties. Access to land and alternative livelihoods, supply chain opportunities, health and public services, and rivalries inevitably around social investment. We had the whole process is also evaluated by Business Social Responsibility, a US NGO, and that came back with some pretty encouraging results. Stakeholders value the process and trust growth, validated within the framework within which communities make their contribution, and talk about impacts and development priorities. The importance of identifying through comprehensive engagement the dynamics between stakeholders and how those may impact your path of development. And we found also that whereas initially many of our managers said, but if you start going out there and asking these very detailed processes, surely expectations will go through the roof. And by and large we found that there's been great maturity on the part of the community we've got. So what's being achieved? We've put in place in many operations new local procurement processes. We've improved local recruitment processes, agricultural capacity building and support programs, particularly for example in Chile, for example, where working in a valley around the smelter, we've worked with the cooperatives in putting together a brand for that particular valley's produce. We've helped the route to market. We've improved the goat breeding. We've started a honey production process and produced new cheese for the area. Infrastructure improvements, putting in place a causeway across a body of water, which has helped bring a community and its hinterland, its natural hinterland together, short-circuiting the need otherwise for, I think it was a 70-mile round trip for those particular communities. And enterprise development initiatives, which already referred to. And we see this as very much part of our long-term commitment. We are a long-term investor. Very often we'll be somewhere for 50 to 70 years, trying to get a regular snapshot of how we're doing, testing ourselves, questioning ourselves, and holding ourselves to account, providing opportunities for the community to do that, so that they can actually scrutinise what our key performance indicators are and whether we're living up to promises or not. So we found it to be very well adopted by our managers. Sometimes the implementation has left some room for improvement, but we're seeing, as we get now into the second wave of implementations, a significant improvement in the quality of what's being measured. So thank you very much indeed.
I really like the presentation, and I really like this. I imagine I can do this in an afternoon or in 10 years.
Well, I speeded through the VSR findings. One of their findings was, of course, the importance of trying to do this in a set timescale. But there's not much point in consulting with the community and then coming back to them a year later because they've lost interest in them. So we try and ensure that we can implement within 6 months. It's impossible to say exactly how many man or woman hours it takes because you have so many different circumstances. We've trained over 500 of our managers. That's generally a 2 to 3 day training process. And then there's an awful lot of learning on the job. It cost us about $250,000 to do the initial development, probably $250,000 to do the second iteration. We haven't sought to put a price on actual implementation across the group so far.
Let's hear about Unity